It's the only game that truly reflects the American century. Its icons and images defining the nation's palette. A country and a sport maturing together. For well over a century, the game of college football has taken shape. Every Saturday, every autumn. And it evolved, not steadily, but through inspired leaps. Individual men redefined the possibilities of the game. And their actions all communicated the same message. I dare you to look away. Game day heroes. When Doug Flutie arrived at Boston College in the fall of 1981, there was common ground. Few people thought that either the player or the school belonged in big-time college football.
When I started getting recruited, the bigger schools were basically saying, look, we really don't think you're going to be a quarterback at the college level. In fact, I remember one guy from Ohio State saying that blatantly. He says, let's be honest with each other, you're not a college quarterback. Even Boston College was skeptical.
We ended up getting Doug. We got Doug in there playing, and what we would do was feed off of his excitement. And the coaches would always be like, look, if you give that kid an extra second, something good's gonna happen, no matter whether we were up or down. Hey, fight your fannies off for this kid, and something good is gonna happen.
Game by game, week by week, Flutie developed a reputation as a winning quarterback. And Boston College's reputation grew alongside his. By the end of his senior year, Flutie was the front runner for the Heisman Trophy, and BC was headed to the Cotton Bowl. But looming was college football's Goliath, the Miami Hurricanes.
And in the Hurricanes of Miami, the defending national champions, their coach is Jimmy Johnson.
Oh, sure, badass Miami. They have, you read it in the papers, they always had some type of criminals.
Our guys were extremely confident, almost to the point of people saying that we were too confident, we were overconfident. We did have a swagger.
They had that cockiness to them, and they were Miami, and the thing that amazed me was just their athleticism.
Those were the kids everybody wanted.
They could fly past you and run up and down the field, and it felt like we were shooting over our heads.
Now it is Jack Bicknell and Doug Flutie who are taking this team to the Cotton Bowl.
We knew that we weren't going to outrun them. We weren't going to outquick them. We kind of had to outposition them and outtime them. And that was our offense. It was all about timing.
And so we came out of the gate smoking.
Flutie with Martin, touchdown, Boston College.
We just walked it up and down the field. It was like practice. You line up, you take your read, you throw the ball, the guy's open, he catches it.
And it's complete for the touchdown. He hits Gerald Phelan.
I can remember every time we scored.
Going for the corner, BC touchdown.
We'd go over, we'd sit down, and we'd hear them moving the ball down. We'd be back out in the field within 5 minutes.
Here he comes, over the top for the touchdown.
We'd score, they'd score. It was a shootout. And early in the game, I can remember saying, whoever has the ball last in this game is gonna win.
The Miami offense was led by quarterback Bernie Kosar, who had racked up 447 passing yards on the day.
Touchdown, Miami.
Flutie and Bernie Kosar traded punches all game long.
Late in the fourth quarter, Boston College led 41-38. But Miami had the ball, it was driving. Just over a minute remained in the game.
I remember looking at the clock and saying, just hurry up and score. We just stick the thing in the end zone now so we have a little bit of time.
It was just, let them score quicker. Coach, let them score quicker. And how do you go up to a head coach and say, hey, coach, let them score? But everybody on that sideline was mumbling. All the offensive coaches were mumbling. Just let them get in the end zone. Give us more time.
Broughton to the end zone.
Miami finally scored the go-ahead touchdown, igniting a celebration in the Orange Bowl. Doug Flutie had 80 yards and only 28 seconds.
I was always a big analyst of those situations. And I would criticize NFL quarterbacks when I was 12 years old of when they used their timeouts and why didn't they do this and why didn't they do that. And, always felt like the time management thing was kind of my cup of tea as I grew up.
I didn't think he had a chance. And obviously you can tell by my tone of voice, I don't think it's gonna work out.
Doug Flutie is down to his last at bat.
As strange as it sounds, me sitting here talking, we still felt pretty confident. I know I certainly did.
And so, with 6 seconds to play, on a misty, muggy South Florida afternoon, Doug Flutie loaded his slingshot one final time.
We practiced this play every day, and it was kind of how we ended practice. At the end of every Thursday and Friday practice, okay, flood tip, fellas.
I think he's got to put it up down and deep in the end zone.
Maybe a designed scramble to allow him to find some time.
We know the play. Miami's got to know the play. They know what we're going to do, and they know we got to get in the end zone, guys. It's not a secret.
But when I ran down the field and ran past the free safety at the 5-yard line, I was very surprised that he allowed me to go by him. Maybe he didn't think Doug could throw the ball that far. I mean, I just don't know what was going through his mind, but that's the last thing you want to do as a free safety.
Maybe he was underestimating arm strength, I don't know. But when you see someone start to roll, you don't think they're going to be throwing the ball 60-something yards.
Flutie flushed, throws it down.
All I see is the ball go down over 2 defensive backs' heads. I see them go up for it, and I just assumed it fell incomplete.
Our defensive back, underplayed the ball and actually knocked another defensive back off of tipping it.
And everybody bumped into each other. The hands went up. The ball was eclipsed for an instant as it disappeared behind the hands, and all of a sudden it was just like as if you catch something out of the corner of your eye, like a pencil's falling off the table, so you just react to it.
Caught by Boston College. I don't believe it. It's a touchdown. He threw it into the end zone. There was no time left on the clock.
I didn't have any idea who caught the ball. My spotter didn't know, I didn't know, nobody in the booth knew. Fortunately for me, there was a Boston College graduate in the truck. He told me that it was Gerard Phelan.
Phelan is at the bottom of that pile.
As I'm running down the field, I don't know what's going on, and all of a sudden I see an official do this. I just turn around, I look, and Doug can't see. If I can't see, Doug can't see. I turn around and I do this, boy, and he just jumps right up, right into my arms. Luckiest catch I ever made. I caught Doug at the end of that play.
I understood how to use the clock.
Well, here we go. Here's your ball game, folks, as Flutie takes the snap. He drops straight back, has some time. Now scrambles away from one hit. Looks, unfortunate deep one for the end zone. Phelan is down there. Oh, he got it! He got it! He got it! Touchdown! 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 Boston College! He did it! He did it! Flutie did it! He got Phelan in the end zone! Touchdown!
Some say college football wasn't built. They say it was born. And its birth date was October 18th, 1924. 60 years before Doug Flutie threw his historic Hail Mary, college football was nothing more than a hobby for snobs and frat boys. An offshoot of rugby considered so dangerous, President Teddy Roosevelt threatened to have it abolished. That is until one day and one man.
As you look back at the 20th century, the Roaring 20s is one of the most important decades in all sports. You had Gene Tunney and Jack Dempsey, you had Babe Ruth, and you had this guy who wore that strange number of 77.
There was a time when you said Red Grange, it was synonymous with college football.
I think in the history of college football, you would have to say he's one of the most 5 famous players. He might even be first.
Number 77. He really was something special, and everybody knew it. Plus, he had those great nicknames, the Galloping Ghost and the Iceman from Wheaton, owing to a summer job where he delivered 25-pound chunks of ice. And he one time said, when he was a student at the University of Illinois, he said, there are people here at school that can get 90s and 100s on chemistry tests and mathematical tests, and I can't. He said, I can run.
He had that great day. The greatest day in the history of college football is probably October 18th, 1924.
On a gray October day, an Illinois junior named Harold Red Grange walked out to his own end zone to field the opening kickoff against Michigan. It was Illinois' homecoming. 67,000 people screamed in the stands around him. None of them knew that Red Grange was about to revolutionize an American pastime. All they knew about Red Grange was that he wasn't wearing socks.
Bob Zupke was the coach of the Illinois football team. He did something interesting. Before the game, he told his players to take off their woolen socks. So they went out on the football field without their socks on. This so upset hurry-up Fielding Yost, the coach at Michigan, that he called a timeout just to see what was going on.
He says, well, they must have greased their legs. That's why they've taken off the socks. So he gets the referees to come over and he has them feel the legs of every Illinois player to make sure they didn't put some kind of grease or a liquid or something on their legs.
And it was interpreted that Bob Zupke was pulling a psychological ploy to upset Michigan before the game even began.
The game started and Grange took the opening kickoff at his own 5-yard line. He slipped through a gang of would-be Michigan tacklers at the 3. When he cut back across the field, he realized he only had one man left to beat.
They only had the safety man. He was back pretty much on the goal line. And I just had one thought in my head. I thought, after these 10 guys get me this far, if that one man can tackle me from a touchdown, I am a pretty lousy football player.
Red Grange ran the opening kickoff back 95 yards for a touchdown. The crowd exploded. And then Michigan did what seems unusual now, but was customary back in a defensive-oriented game of the 1920s. They opted to kick off to Illinois again.
Many coaches would prefer to have the opposition have the ball in their own territory, because if they lost it, then this was a good chance to score.
On the third play from scrimmage, Illinois handed the ball to Grange, who ran 67 yards for his second touchdown. And then the cycle repeated. Michigan would kick to Illinois, Illinois would hand off to Grange, and Grange would run for touchdowns.
It was just like, this can't happen. And if it was against perhaps Butler or some second-rate school, maybe, but this is Michigan, and it's just stunning.
Before the first quarter ended, Grange had run for 4 touchdowns.
Grange is so exhausted after about 11 minutes of the first period that he doesn't say so, but he's just begging to get out of the game. He's run himself silly, and here is a man who has 4 touchdowns of 67, 95, 40, and 35 or so yards within 12 minutes.
He sits out the whole second quarter. He's exhausted. Comes back in the second half, ends up scoring 5 touchdowns that day. Passed for another touchdown, rushed for 402 yards. Might have been as good a day as anybody ever enjoyed in college football.
Probably the single greatest game any player has ever had in the history of college football. He destroyed Michigan, and that day he became immortal. You don't want to say a football player is immortal, but if you ever had a football player who was immortal, it was Red Grange.
Well, you know, down here in this part of the country, we've been a little ahead of a lot of them in a lot of respects, football-wise.
On November 20th, 1935, the sporting world converged on Fort Worth, Texas, the heart of tornado country. They came to see #1 TCU play 4th-ranked SMU in a game with national championship implications.
And they would throw 20, 30 times a game, which was unheard of then. It was a little bit more sophisticated version of sandlot football, where you say, okay, you snap the ball to me, you go down to the car and turn left.
They were there to see a storm brewing on the field, which promised to take the game to the air. They were in attendance to see the exploits of TCU's quarterback, Sammy Baugh.
They called him Slinging Sammy Baugh. Sammy Baugh was just an uncanny passer without much effort, seemingly with no effort at all. He could just take the ball and fling it.
Baugh rifles a bullet into the end zone, touchdown.
In my book, he is the great passer of all time, taking all of them together today. Great person, great individual, and great star at TCU, you know.
He had total confidence in his ability to do things. And Sam has a little bit of a Daniel Boone type character about him.
One time the coach there told him, now Sammy, the receiver's going down, and when he turns, I want you to hit him in the eye with the ball. And Sammy supposedly said, Coach, which eye?
Texas, where the TCU Hornet Frogs and the SMU Mustangs contest for the Southwest Conference Championship and the probable Rose Bowl invitation.
In a game that turned Sammy Baugh into a legend, he threw the ball 44 times.
Again, Sammy Baugh drops back and shoots one right down the center of the field, which is caught by L.D. Myers.
I mean, this was considered a massive gamble, and nobody did this.
Many of the fans in attendance had never seen Southwest Conference football before, and they were stunned to see Sammy Baugh firing again and again in almost any situation.
Sammy Baugh fades back and shoots one to Jimmy Myers over for a touchdown. SMU 14, TCU 13.
TCU had several chances to pull away, but Sammy Baugh's receivers dropped 8 of his bullet-like passes. SMU snatched the victory with a last-second touchdown pass.
Long pass down the field, and it's good into the arms of Bobby Wilson for a touchdown.
The fans and the press, including sports writer Grantland Rice, who witnessed the game, had seen the future of college football, and it was in the air.
They wrote about those two teams as if they had discovered, gold or something, and they were just fascinated by it.
People wrote about that game, coaches read about it throughout the country, and they started thinking maybe there is something to passing it as an offense.
It didn't matter that he completed only 17 for 180 yards or that TCU lost. The legend of Slinging Sammy Baugh was born. In the mid-1950s, a player arrived on the college scene whom words fail to describe. Flabbergasted stories began traveling down from the Northeast. Awestruck descriptions of a man with the strength of 10 and the intensity of 20.
And I'm my harshest critic because I remember all the things I didn't do, because I always wanted to do as well as I could.
It was sort of a Paul Bunyan type thing. He, in the final home game against Colgate, he scored 43 points.
It didn't take any genius to know that Jim Brown was special. When I used to tell people about him, I would say that he had legs like telephone poles, except there weren't any telephone poles that strong.
But then there was this small waist, and going up from the waist, it was like an inverted pyramid, going up to the shoulder and the chest. It was monstrous. He was the strongest built person overall that I have ever seen. And it showed on the football field.
Brown is the man with a mission. Just watch this all-American running style.
I had the opinion, and I've always had this opinion, there's only been one great football player, and it was Jim Brown.
Jim Brown's games at Syracuse were rarely televised, so to most football fans, the great runner was more legend than man. The nation was formally introduced to Jim Brown in 1957 at the nationally televised Cotton Bowl. At the same time as his team arrived in Dallas, Jim Brown was formally introduced to the state of Texas.
It was just an experience that I had mixed emotions about because it was, political. The number one thing on my mind was race, and it shouldn't have been.
Thousands of football fans flocked to the huge Cotton Bowl Stadium to be entertained by minstrel bands in colorful costumes.
They had black entertainers dressed as minstrels, just as they had been in the early 1880s, right after the Civil War. And it was right in front of the Cotton Bowl. This was the entertainment for Dallas.
Syracuse's opponent was Texas Christian University, who was essentially playing a home game. It had been 20 years since TCU suited up Sammy Baugh, but one thing hadn't changed. The Horned Frogs were all homegrown Texas boys.
There were no black players on the Southwest Conference teams, and playing Jim Brown, who was black from Syracuse, was a little special for them. They were very aware of who he was, that he was an All-American, that he was maybe the best football player they'd ever seen.
Brown's first half was a masterpiece. His versatility was as astonishing as his strength. He threw a 20-yard pass that set up his own score. He ran for both Syracuse touchdowns.
So Jim Brown goes the last mile. There goes a loaf of bread for Syracuse. That was good for 4 yards, 6 points.
And he kicked both of the extra points.
I had a good game, but I didn't reach my peak.
Jim Brown brought to the sport an energy source that not many people have. He was driven by demons of the past that surfaced in anger that he could control, and he turned it into physical energy that made him run a little bit faster and hit a little bit harder, and I think that's what made him special.
This man was Superman. When you gave the ball to Brown, even if they were keying on him, you had to have 3, 4 people to really take him down.
At halftime, TCU's team went into the locker room tied 14 apiece. TCU's offense took charge in the third quarter.
And he runs 7 yards to the goal line, and the Frogs have moved ahead again.
The Horned Frogs punctured Syracuse for 2 quick touchdowns and took the lead 28-14. Syracuse was on the brink.
Syracuse was a little outdated with our offense, and the plays were limited.
The burden of the comeback fell upon Brown's shoulders. In the fourth quarter, Brown returned a kickoff 46 yards to midfield.
Jim Brown behind tremendous cover, running back the kickoff for 46 yards.
Syracuse drove to the goal line, and Brown scored his 3rd touchdown of the day on a 1-yard plunge, bringing the game within 8. But as Brown lined up to kick the extra point, a TCU defenseman named Chico Mendoza burst through the line and blocked the kick.
There was a change in assignment between my fullback and my end, and I don't think the fullback got the change.
The block turned the tide of the game. Syracuse scored once more, but could not overcome the blocked extra point. They lost 28-27. But to a television audience of millions, the final score of the game seemed secondary.
This game was Jim Brown's coming into prominence.
Bowl President Bob Cullum presents Jim Brown one of the Outstanding Player Awards.
A lot of people gave me a lot of credit for that game. It's the first time, I guess, they saw me on national television.
He was probably the greatest runner there ever was, college or professional.
I spoke to the ball players from TCU. They all acknowledged that this was the best ball player that they had ever come up against. I mean, they didn't speak about him being black, white, or green. I mean, he was just the best ball player that they had ever actually played against.
By the 1970s, capabilities of a well-oiled offense were limitless. In 1972, a freshman running back at USC began making some bold statements about the impossible achievements he thought he was capable of. His name was Anthony Davis.
When I finally was a starter, I made a statement that I was going to have 2 long runs against Notre Dame. So a lot of people said, God, that little cocky, how's he going to do that? This is Notre Dame, the biggest, the most physical team in college football, the #1 collegiate team of all time.
A perfect day for football, and the Fighting Irish are coming onto the floor of the Los Angeles Coliseum.
It did not take long for Davis to back up his claim. Davis took the opening kickoff all the way back, 95 yards for a touchdown. Only one more long run remained for Davis to fulfill his preposterous promise.
There's no way he's going to bring back the second one. So they kicked it off.
Kickoff back to the 5, 10, 15, gets a block, an opening, gets away from a tackler, comes to the sidelines. At the 40, 45, midfield. He fakes one guy at the 40, back to the 35, staggers. He's headed for the end zone for the second time today. Davis takes a kickoff all the way.
Davis, only a freshman, scored 6 touchdowns against Notre Dame that day.
I was arrogant and cocky and stupid. My junior year, I went back and found out how serious they took it.
And the Coliseum today is the site for the 46th meeting between the Notre Dame Fighting Irish and the Southern California Trojans.
National TV game, 80,000 people in the stadium.
That's pretty rough. Tom Clements gets the ball.
Of course. Notre Dame was on top of the game better than we were.
Still got it. Comes back to throw. Gets his pass off. Going deep. Got a man. Touchdown. Notre Dame.
I knew what I was in for.
And the handoff goes to Anthony Davis. And Davis is hit right at the line of scrimmage. And he took a solid wallop from Niehaus.
AD left, he gets stuffed. AD right, he gets stuffed. AD up the middle, he gets stuffed.
Cuts to the outside of the 20, and he is buried under the Notre Dame white shirts at the 20-yard line. And no question about it, every time Davis steps on some grass, there's going to be a white shirt going with him. The Trojans had better get something going pretty quick because the Fighting Irish have jumped to a 17-0 lead. They throw it off this time to McLean, and he scores.
Before we knew it, it was 24-0.
Anthony Davis managed to squeak in with a touchdown just before the first half ended.
Touchdown!
The score was 24-6 when USC coach John McKay gathered his team. Facing an opponent with a long history of memorable halftime speeches, the USC coach inspired with one of his own.
John McKay was a very volatile coach. And everybody was stunned, and he got the team together at halftime. This was the best halftime I've ever seen.
He simply said, we can come back and win. And, well, when he said that, we thought the man was out of his mind. There's no way you come back on Notre Dame like that, not 24-6. So he walks back in front of us and says, somebody has to make something happen here. And he's smoking his cigar, and he's blowing the smoke across the way. He said, and all of a sudden he looked at the corner of the locker room and says, they're going to kick the ball to AD, and he's going to bring it all the way back.
And I'll tell you this, the men of Troy have cut themselves a problem. They trail 24-6. Here's the kick. McLaughlin knocks it high and deep.
I haven't saw a kick like this in 2 years. Endo ran, perfect kick in my hands, 2 yards deep in the end zone.
And Davis, 2 yards deep in the end zone, will bring it back. The wedge gets him to the 20. He breaks it at the 25. He's long gone at the 40. It's now a foot race, and here goes Anthony Davis for 102 yards and a touchdown.
And I tell you, that was the fastest I ever ran.
I thought, okay, that makes it 24-12. Then it makes it a little closer. And then he runs and gets another touchdown.
And here's the pitch wide to Davis. Good blocking on the right side. Touchdown.
You just felt something happen. I mean, the creek was rising fast, and it overflowed. Once it got started, gone. And that was truly, genuinely the night that Ara Parsegian learned to hate that damn white horse.
The second half was one of those things that occurs in games
whether you're playing football or baseball or basketball, where the momentum shifts, you could visually see the momentum in the game and the attitudes change on the field.
We turned into madmen. I mean, like, I was tireless. I was ready to go again.
Hayden gives the ball to Anthony Davis. Touchdown!
And then as he scored each touchdown, it was like the crescendo of an orchestra reaching high peak. And you were just about ready to hear the cymbals clash. And he just went nuts, 6 touchdowns. That's not supposed to happen.
And we scored 49 points in 10 minutes.
And Hayden rolls left to the wide side, going to put it up, goes into the end zone. Touchdown! Hayden going deep. McKay wide open. Touchdown! Limits to put it up. Intercepted. It's ended for McAfee. It may be 6. Here goes Phillips. It's all the way. Touchdown!
What did it wind up, 55-24, something like that? How do I remember that number? And I can't remember my wife's birthday. I don't know. I don't know.
And the sky has indeed fallen on Notre Dame.
Collegiately and professionally, I've never been involved in anything like that. Greatest game I've ever been a part of. I've never seen a game like that ever since.
Oh, I'll tell you that Anthony Davis is a nightmare for Notre Dame.
After that game, walking out of the locker room, and I see these women in the shadow, and this one woman in particular came out, and she's waving this crucifixion in my face. She says, nobody does that against Notre Dame. You must be the devil.
Coach Bryant could be summed up as a motivator, a leader, someone that could make you dig deep inside yourself to find out whether you got guts. He would leave you out there. It was called, quote unquote, we used to laugh about gut check. He wanted to see if you had the guts to make it through it. He always taught us how to prepare for that opportunity, because you never know when that moment's gonna come.
The moment was January 1st, 1979. The Sugar Bowl. #1 Penn State versus #2 Alabama. At stake, the national championship. And linebacker Barry Krauss is lucky to still be a member of the Crimson Tide. 2 seasons earlier, he had broken one of Coach Bear Bryant's most sacred rules, team curfew, and found himself summoned to the legendary coach's office.
And I was standing before him, but he wouldn't look at me. And I said, Coach Bryant, I said, I'm sorry. Then I realized that wasn't good enough. And all of a sudden, I broke down and I started crying. I'm crying. And I looked at him with one eye open and I said, but he still wasn't looking at me. And I'm going, uh-oh, I'm in a lot of trouble. And because of I had heard about a quarterback, a lot better looking, a lot better athlete, guy named Joe Namath missing curfew, and Coach Bryant kicked him off of the team, kicked him off a scholarship. And I said, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm gonna do. All of a sudden, I shifted into another gear of crying, and it was one of those ones where you lose all the air and you start jerking all over the place, and I got tears flying. I said, Coach Bryant, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I said, I apologize. And I said, you gotta understand, if you kick me off a scholarship, my mom is gonna kill me, you know, and I'm just jerking around, and all of a sudden he looks at me and he says, son, and he did it in his grumbling voice, and he says, you better straighten up. I said, yes, sir, you know, and I go running out of that office as quickly as I could. And I learned a big lesson that day. When you're in a lot of trouble, cry.
Midway through the 4th quarter, Alabama was leading 14-7 when disaster struck. They fumbled on their own 19-yard line, giving Penn State a chance to steal the national title, and Barry Krauss a chance to seize the opportunity that Bear Bryant had always told him to be ready for. Krauss, a role player on the Crimson Tide defense, was in the game only because another player got hurt 3 minutes earlier.
77, Barry Krauss goes in at linebacker now.
Penn State now had 3rd and goal from the 8-yard line. But before Barry Krauss took center stage, his Alabama teammate, Don McNeil, made an incredible play of his own.
Roll to the right, puts it up, it is good, Mystique,
And I want to tell you something, folks. There was one whale of a defensive play by Alabama's John McNeil.
McNeil stopped Fisk a mere 8 inches from the goal line, making it 4th down and destiny.
We all held hands. We kind of looked at each other and, man, this is what it's all about. This is gut check. This is what we've worked for. Somebody has to make the play. We're all going to be a part of it. I mean, this is the moment that you just wait for.
19-game win streak, only undefeated team in the country, ranked #1 in the nation. Alabama ranked #2. Everything could be hanging on 4th and goal with a half a yard.
I actually thought that they were going to play a little play-action pass, and fortunately for us, they decided just to hand the ball off. And the guy cuts actually back in to me. And then, you know, that's when I met him at the top and over the pile, and that's what you dream about.
Gooman.
When I hit him, I actually broke a corner of my helmet. I broke my face mask. I pinched a nerve in my neck. And what would happen is it would paralyze me immediately.
An Alabama man is down on the field. It looks like it might be Barry Krauss. I think he just kind of got caught in the crush underneath.
And I was laying there, and I just didn't know. I didn't know if we stopped him. I didn't know. I laid there for a while, and Marty Lyons picked me up, and he goes, "We did it. We stopped him." And I was like, yes, we did.
It is over. Alabama has defeated Penn State, and the Bear goes for a ride.
And I remember coming off the field with Marty and with the guys, and it was just incredible.
He went head-on with Gooman and took a solid shot, but he got the job done. That's what he'll remember as the years go by.
Barry, I think it's symbolic of this struggle today that a member of the defensive team should be awarded the most outstanding player. And I know Coach Bryan is proud of you. I know your teammates are proud of you, and the Sugar Bowl is very proud of you. Congratulations to you.
Thank you very much. Can I say something?
Sure can.
I tell you, I thank God for the ability he gave me. Most of our defense, man, they played hell game. And it's a great feeling just to be able to play for Coach Bryant and to be a part of Alabama. Thank you. Thank you.
Barry Krauss was named to the SEC's Team of the Decade and was a first-round draft pick of the Baltimore Colts. He played 10 seasons for the Colts, never topping the glory of that one moment in the 1979 Sugar Bowl. Lest we forget, the game of college football began as an offshoot of rugby. Over 100 years later, it has evolved into a machine that barely resembles its ancient ancestors. But every once in a rare while, a glimmer of the old game returns. And somehow, after a century of evolution, the game finds a way to come full circle.
Seen anything like it? For California, through and through.
The year was 1982. California versus Stanford. With time running out, Stanford and their comeback master, John Elway, trailed 19-17.
Throws for Harry. It's complete. Hold everything.
A flurry of euphoria spread wildly among the Stanford faithful.
Mark Harmon, 35-yard kick will win it. Listen to the crowd. Here's the snap. Here's the kick. It is long enough, and it's good. Stanford hits it with 4 seconds to go and takes the lead 20-19. Only a miracle can save the Bears. The Stanford.
It was awful chaotic. I was sitting on the bench and, thrilled to death to be ahead 20-19. To be honest with you, you never take anything for granted, but if this was one time we took it for granted, it was probably this time.
A simple squib kick, an easy tackle, and the Cardinal was bowl bound. 4 seconds remain on the clock, a mere formality.
At that point, I went on the field, and one of the other guys had gathered a group of guys on the sidelines just to say, hey, don't let the ball die, it's 4 seconds left, keep it alive.
The Bears in a seemingly impossible situation. They pretty well have to run it back.
Cal would have practice on Sunday, and they would have this drill called grabaz. And they would have this drill where it was like a rugby drill. where they would just have fun to let off steam. They would throw the ball around, and he'd try to tackle a guy, and he'd keep throwing around, and it was just kind of to let off steam kind of drill. Well, that drill became part of college football lore.
There we go with the kickoff. Harmon will probably try to squib it.
I think we were one guy short on the actual kickoff return team, and I remember looking to the right of me thinking, God, there's supposed to be somebody over there, but nobody's there, so I kind of slid over a little bit, which then happened to just put me in a position where when he kicked off, he kicked the squib kick, came right to me. And at that point, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to score a touchdown. You know, it wasn't so much get rid of the ball, it was, hey, I'm going to score. After about 2 steps and seeing 3 Stanford guys running at me, I quickly changed my mind on that. I took a look to the sidelines and happened to see Richard Rogers standing there, so I threw him the ball. I saw him run up a few yards, turn around, lateral to Dwight Garner.
And when Dwight Garner starts up the field and he just gets shackled by a bunch of our guys.
You know, that's where the controversial part of the play, I think, begins.
Dwight Garner's knee, was it down? Was it not down?
He was down.
Dwight was 6 inches off the ground.
No way. The guy clearly was down.
There isn't a Stanford person who thought that his knee wasn't down.
We see his knee on the ground. We see him bent over backwards, and we're walking out on the field. I mean, we've got cheerleaders, you know, jumping on us, and we're celebrating, enjoying it.
The ball is still loose as they get it to Rogers.
And the next thing I know, there's a wave of blue coming towards me. And no sooner would you get closer to that next person with the ball than it would disappear to somebody else.
Probably the most spectacular part of the play was Moret's lateral to me to finish off the laterals. Without looking, kind of an over the pass, flying in the air, you know, lobbed it up where it landed perfectly in my arms.
Stanford band comes on the field. Kevin Moen is serpentining through the Stanford band. There's some guy named Gary Tyrell, a nondescript musician, you know, a student at Stanford, who's playing his trombone, and Kevin Moen hits him like Bronco Nagurski.
The only thing that we wish we'd have done is, you know, taught the trombone player how to tackle.
Boom, he knocks him over, and all of a sudden, what is happening here? And of course, the officials have got to get into circle, because that's what officials always do. They always get into circle when it's a time of conjecture, frustration. And what do we do now, folks?
Wait and see what happens. We don't know who won the game. There are flags on the field.
We try to huddle around the officials, and we could tell they were intimidated by what was going on. There were fans on the field. There was yelling and screaming. It was really loud, and they were trying to shove us away, and they didn't want to hear what we had to say. And then one guy steps away, and he calls a touchdown. And we just couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it.
Definitely at that point in time, it was the most tragic thing that had ever happened to me, and especially when we were kind of in line for a bowl game that year.
And those 2 guys from the bowl are standing behind me, and I'm standing right in front of them, and I said, well, guys, what do you think now? One guy looked at me and he said, you know, they always tell you in your life that you're going to see something that you've never seen before, one time in your life. He said, I guess this is it. Well, I guess we'll give the bowl bid to the Air Force Academy or somebody like that.
The one time in your life you see something you've never seen before. College football offers that opportunity year after year, autumn after autumn.
The ball is still loose as they get it to Rogers. They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. Oh, the band is out on the field. He's looking over to the end zone.
From Baugh to Brown, and Davis to Flutie, from the galloping ghost to the trombone player, forever etched into the rites of autumn.
There are flags on the field. The most amazing, sensational, dramatic, heartrending, exciting, thrilling finish in the history of college football. Oh, excuse me for my voice, but I have never seen anything like it in the history of I've ever seen any game in my life.
College football isn't just a game. It's a spectacle filled with history, tradition, and passion.
People ask me, what game should I see? And I always tell them the third weekend in October at West Point. The leaves are changing. You walk across that campus and you think of the people who went there. Ulysses S. Grant, MacArthur, Eisenhower, Bradley. You feel their ghost. They're there. And then on Saturday morning, they have the parade with those tall hats, eyes right, and you stand there and you say, this is something. And it's autumn, the best time of the year. When God created October, he said, this is when we're going to play college football.
As the kickoff nears, emotions swell within the guts of the players. Young warriors are asked to recall those who came before them, the very ones who sculpted legends inside the walls of their school stadium. This passing of the gridiron torch links generations of athletes and expands on that institution's mystique.
Notre Dame stands out because of its Golden Dome. Now, that's a trite statement, but believe me, anybody that mentions Notre Dame anywhere in the world will talk about the Golden Dome. So you can start right there.
The night before the game, we stayed at a little seminary across the lake from Notre Dame. Right in front of me was the Golden Dome, and I would just look out there, and I would think about the fact of, how many other guys sat here? Which other players sat here doing this? I think that's when I realized where I was and what this meant.
The fact that the mosaic of Christ on the wall of the library and his hands are shaped like a touchdown. You don't get that anywhere else.
But there are more than mere effigies fixed to the aura of Notre Dame. Opponents are competing with folklore and tradition that inspire inexplicable awe.
I think it's the mystique of originally the underdog winning, and America loves the outsider, loves the underdog.
I think when you first come to the university, when you leave, you take something with you. There's something here that you feel.
You feel the ghosts, you feel the ghost of Rockney and Leahy and Horning and Lujack and Latner, and the names just go on and on.
And then you got in the locker room and shut out all those traditions, all the pageantry, all the things, and you sat down and you got ready to go to war.
Even a mystical power like Notre Dame cannot rely solely on history and lore to carry its kids to victory. In fact, the burden of living up to a glorious past can be overwhelming. But it is precisely at moments like these that a coach must summon a supreme sense of motivation and create a legend and a locker room tradition of his own.
Don't forget, man, we're gonna get them on the run. We're gonna go, 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 and we aren't gonna stop until we go to that goal line.
There's only one way you get respect, and that's by looking somebody in the eye for 60 minutes. Go out there, hitch up your trousers, and say, hey, baby, here I am now. Let me see you run through me now. Let me see you show some disrespect for me when I'm nose on your nose. Let me see what you think of me now that my face is to you.
I've been lucky enough to play in world championships and play in front of the biggest crowds that have ever seen football games. Nothing compares to that first opportunity when you run out of that tunnel into Notre Dame Stadium.
It seems like you're not all alone. You're a total group, but then you also have the spirit of Notre Dame with you. And then I knew I was at the right place at the right time, and knew I wasn't out there by myself.
It's like your feet don't touch the ground. All of a sudden you burst out into this arena. All the energy is focused towards you. All the attention is at you. The stadium is set up in such a way, the fans are so close, the students are so close, and it's like a giant wave that just floats you out from the tunnel out to the sideline.
But South Bend is not the only place where an entrance onto the field is special. In many stadiums, when players burst out of that tunnel, the rush of adrenaline seems unparalleled.
And now, here come the Clemson Tigers, and there's that big rock.
When Howard's Rock was brought to Clemson from Death Valley, California, Coach Frank Howard told his team, if y'all gonna give me 110%, you can rub that rock. If you're not, keep your filthy hands off of it. Since that time, Clemson's descent into their own Death Valley has been called the 25 most exciting seconds in sports. While many schools lay claim to awe-inspiring entrances, running onto the hallowed grounds of Michigan's Big House is, for many, unforgettable.
The first time I hit that stadium, it just shook me up. I don't think there was a time I ever played in a game where I didn't stand in there and knowing your parents are there and you don't tear up. You get all excited and emotional.
When you see that stadium packed and how colorful it is, how loud it is, to be there and to experience that song and to see those helmets, and when all the players come together and they bob up and down, that is a moment that you go, oh my goodness, something great is about to happen.
In the South, college football is a morality play. Absolute good versus absolute evil.
A trip across the nation will unearth distinctive celebrations of the game, but none match the frenzied pulse that beats in the veins of college football fans down south. As Marino Chasm, the longtime coach at Alcorn University, once said, in the East, college football is a cultural exercise. On the West Coast, it's a tourist attraction. In the Midwest, it is cannibalism. But down south, it is religion. And Saturday is its holy day.
Well, you start with when you're very young, and it's 365 days a year. You hear about it on the radio every day. You hear about it in conversations with your friends. It just becomes a way of life.
Those teams represent the people in that state. That's Alabama. You know, if you're from Alabama and Alabama's winning, you feel pretty good about yourself.
Touchdown! Touchdown!
In the first half of the 20th century, there were few or no pro sports teams in the South, and the college gridiron became the main show in town. Victories here became a source of pride for generations of fans who had felt looked down upon since as far back as the Civil War.
Because we lacked a lot of the cultural graces that you would find in the North or the Midwest, football as a sport was something that we could go and beat our chest very proudly and say, we're at the top of this, we've arrived, we're a part of what y'all are.
With so much seemingly at stake for each game, rituals evolved that gave fans the chance not only to inspire their teams, but to get closer to their heroes.
One of Auburn's great traditions is the Tiger Walk, where the fans line the sidewalk, and really they're in the street, and the players walk between them. Fans are cheering, and everybody's excited, and the players get a real sense of what it means to the fans.
As they reach out and touch the shoulder of a player, and they look that player in the eyes, I think they feel that they can give him some of their enthusiasm, some of their love of Auburn.
Just fighting your way through the bigger people and, you know, let me get a watch, let me get a look. You know, if you got on the front row, you were doing something. And I remember my dad saying, come on, get up there, work your way up there.
In 1993, Auburn was living on NCAA probation. There was no television or bowl games for the school devotees. And yet, the short-handed Tigers had gone 10-0. The only team that stood in the way of a perfect season was reviled Alabama. That Saturday morning, senior quarterback Stan White and his teammates left their dorms for Jordan-Hare Stadium.
The fans now have spilled over the curbs and onto the street as they want to touch their heroes and wish them well.
We had to literally hold hands going single file line the whole way from the dorm. I mean, it wasn't just the last 50 yards, it was the quarter of a mile or so that we had to walk.
I can remember being so overwhelmed that I thought I was going to hyperventilate. And I said, man, if these players can just get through this Tiger Walk, there's no way we're going to lose that game.
Here up the middle, Bostic, 5 yards, 10 yards, 45, Bostic, 50, Bostic, racing to the 45, to the 40, breaking and tackle to the 30, to the 20, to the 10, he's gone! Touchdown, Auburn!
And of course, we came back in the fourth quarter and won that game.
In some places, these pregame rituals take on a significance that surpasses the game itself. At Texas A&M, they leave fans poised to unleash a game day frenzy and unite the university in a way that little else can. In an unmatched display of devotion and camaraderie, 50,000 people will fill Kyle Field on Friday nights to practice yelling for the next day's game. Perhaps Texas A&M's greatest tradition is one that began as a symbol of the Aggies' burning desire to beat the hell out of Texas. It has come to mean much more.
Each of the logs being wired to 2 other logs is symbolic of the loyalty that Texas A&M graduates have to the school and to each other. And it's something that runs really, really deep, and it's at the very foundation of what Texas A&M's all about.
First built in 1909, the Aggie Bonfire has been recognized as the largest in the world. The details of its intricate construction passed down through the years.
So look at all those flash bulbs going off. It's a great fire.
But this unsurpassed passion can sometimes lead to tragedy.
The rescue workers have been able to extricate one student from underneath the stacks. They've been working feverishly ever since this happened. I'm sure that
On November 18th, 1999, during its final week of construction, the bonfire collapsed, killing 12 Aggies.
Last night, the bonfire collapsed, and a lot of people are hurt. And it's sad. It's tough.
Makes you think that, well, I'm out here playing a football game, and those people gave their lives for something that this school believed in and something they believed in. We want to play in a manner which is honorable to them.
Our team actually came out early to start the second half of our game with Texas, and it was a circumstance I've never seen before in years of college coaching. An entire stadium, we had the largest crowd to ever see a football game in the state of Texas, and there was dead silence in the stadium.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a part of their tribute to the bonfire victims, the 4,400...
I thought it was a great expression of the true good in human nature, that not only our fans, but the Texas fans were there, all those people. There was a common bond of human feeling, and I thought it was exhibited that day at that stadium.
I once was taking a midnight bus from Syracuse to New York, and I sat down on the bus, and the man sitting next to me began humming and singing college fight songs. And I turned to him and I said, "Oh, is that your alma mater?" And he said, "No, it's the football season, and I love it."
Saturday, and the orange sun peeking through crimson-brown leaves is deceiving in the crisp air. Station wagons, campers, and luxury sedans roll to a stop in cornfields and leaf-fallen asphalt. It's game day. But before the lines are crossed and battle begins, people from all walks of life gather in this parking lot. They are not here merely to watch their current heroes, but to swap tales of past gridiron greatness as they savor the food, the colors, the smells. They are part of a tradition that takes its name from the back of a truck, but is hardly limited to that. Tailgating is a part of autumn from the yards of Harvard to the swamps of the bayou.
And there's no place like Baton Rouge on a Saturday night. I mean, absolutely no place. The mobile homes come rolling in and they set up tents and they start cooking their Cajun foods. And everywhere you look, there are signs that say "Go Tigers," G-E-A-U-X. They have been into the grape too much before the ball game starts, and they go and they really enjoy the contest.
So come on, all you Tigers! Come on, all you Tigers! And shake your caboose! And shake your caboose!
Those people take vacations strictly to be able to come to see LSU, plan their whole season around LSU season tickets to come to the football game. And that's good. That's really good.
Whatever it is that makes fans with names like Ragu, Crazy Tony, and Hard Hat Bob gather up their families and join the makeshift Mardi Gras party outside thunderous Tiger Stadium isn't limited to LSU.
You go in Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, we have 4 generations. Sometimes we have the great-grandfather and the grandfather and then the young ones down here.
There is such an attachment by alumni to the sport of college football with the bands, the cheerleaders, the tailgating.
At the annual Harvard-Yale match, corporate planning and political strategies often replace conversations of lineups and national championships.
It's a unique crowd. First of all, they still come back. A lot of people with the raccoon coats. The women are in fur coats. They're walking around with the Manhattans and the martinis. It's not the cans of beer. They come in limos and they set up these long picnic tables and they bring out magnums of champagne. I mean, it's really a unique pageant. That's what makes it so spectacular.
It becomes a social event. Alums of Harvard and Yale, and those going to Harvard and Yale, those who associate themselves with Harvard and Yale, the 2 most elite schools in America, come to this game. It's a very, very large event.
And you never know who you can see. There's always famous people walking around Yale-Harvard games. And they come from miles around.
This distinguished Ivy League rivalry gave birth to tailgating. The autumn phenomenon began in the 1890s in Springfield, Massachusetts, where Harvard-Yale games were once held.
Boston and Maine and Boston and Albany stations were absolutely mobbed by people.
Radcliffe girls dressed with chrysanthemums anxiously waited with Harvard boys who would boo anytime they saw someone wearing Yale's colors. The idea of the crimson versus the blue was born. And with this pageantry came the desire not just to cheer, but to celebrate.
There were people that chartered parlor cars, sort of like luxury boxes that would take them to Springfield with all drinks and amenities.
In the fall, when the kids were all back to school and ready to go, this gave them the chance to get out there and really be part of Yale University, became part of them. And they were able to go out and cheer for their team and start with the fight songs and the colors and everything that came with it.
Students who give 4 years of their life to a college will one day come back for football games, because it is here that they rekindle friendships and smile at stories they've heard countless times before. college football provides a fabric that knits generations and classes together in a way that little else can.
Fumble, can't find the handle. SC jumps on it. The Trojans have it at the Notre Dame 15-yard line. On 4th and 1, he gets his pass off. It is intercepted. I don't believe it. Oh, he's loose. He's got a convoy. You can't find it. He's still dribbling it. He falls on it. One man. Goodbye. Touchdown, Buckeyes. Whoa, Nelly.
You'd hate to think of where college football might have been without Keith Jackson.
They call him Jingle Joints. He's a big, lanky boy. He has a great stride.
Oh, Nelly. They're hot today. The barn's on fire and they're taking a couple rows of the cornfield.
And the last time Brian Greasy ran that far, his dad was chasing him with a stick.
Oh, you never knew what he was going to say.
That's too much hesitation. You can't be toe dancing around back there. They'll give you a tutu. You got to put your head down and go north and south.
You can sense Keith is excited. And I think he brings fans along with him when he does that.
It's time to blow out the candle. This party is about to begin.
If you're looking for one guy, one voice, it's Keith Jackson.
He's got it. He's gone. Goodbye. There was nobody home, nothing but taillights and a TD.
With a down-home wit cultivated on the farms of Georgia, Keith Jackson has been entertaining college football fans since he became a play-by-play announcer for ABC Sports in 1966. But Jackson, like many of the great television announcers, got his start and his inspiration from the radio.
Radio is the use of words. It's a creation of images. It's the ability, if the announcer is worth a damn, to build a picture for somebody to see.
Score is Southern Methodist 14, Notre Dame 20, but SMU has got this ball down on the Notre Dame 2-yard line, right directly in front of the goal post. It's midway.
Before Bill Stern stepped behind a microphone in 1934, he was a stage manager for the Radio City Musical. In the years that followed, he would bring a sense of theater to the radio that made the drama of a college football game come to life in living rooms, pool halls, and barbershops across the country.
Kyle Rote 7 yards behind his center. He starts slow, too. He could get hit back there. It's Rote trying to go around the left side of his line. He is into the end zone. He scores!
Well, he was essentially a showman. And one of the things he knew was that college football needs emotion. And emotion is best personified by cheers, the crowd yelling, the screaming. That's what brings it in, the crowd roar.
Score is Notre Dame 20, Southern Methodist 20. Excuse me yelling, but believe me, I have to yell to make yourself heard. Over 75,000 half-hysterical football maniacs.
Stearns was good because he's on the radio, and if you're out 1,500 miles away, you don't know whether he's telling the truth or not.
Stern would often make mistakes and never concede the fact that he made a mistake. So if Smith was running with the ball and he had Jones and the man was about to go the distance, at the very end he'd have this phantom lateral.
Tucker laterals over to Davis. Glenn picks a one-way street, breaks away from a Navy tackler and scores standing up. Listen to that crowd.
The man who paved the way for Bill Stern's showmanship was the father of live sportscasting, Graham McNamee. The 1927 Rose Bowl between Alabama and Stanford would be the first ever coast-to-coast radio broadcast of any kind. And McNamee's compelling description of the 7-7 tie captivated those who made the game their New Year's Day entertainment.
He had a lot of exuberance. He worked himself into a frenzy prior to the game and made fans even crazier. But his style wasn't one that was very prescribed. The man who gave it a prescribed style was the great Ted Using.
Krauss, a quick crisscross play, gives it to Davis, a left half. Davis right around the Davis into the clear.
He was the creme de creme.
If Bill Stern was college football's best storyteller, then Ted Using was his master technician.
Bill had this wonderful ability to just waltz into a booth whatever it was, and make it happen. Ted stayed up all night preparing.
This cross-buck play to his right halfback, Dale Hall. Hall over left tackle, gets in the clear, goes for a touchdown.
The golden voices of Husing, Stern, McNamee, and their peers connected legions of fans directly to their teams. They helped make college football the nation's #1 sports attraction on the radio.
We had it fairly rough, but we did always have a radio. And you worked, and when you got home, you listened to the radio. And it was Ted Husing and Bill Stern and those guys, and they could make a chicken fight sound really exciting.
You'd listen to a Notre Dame game by either announcer. Goosebumps from start to finish.
Taking an overhead catch by Terry Brennan on his own two. He's up to the 3, the 5, the 10, the 15, the 20, up to the 25, the 30, the 35, the 40, up to the 45, the 50, down to the 45, the 40, down to the 35, the 30. He's down to the 20, the 15, the 10, the 5. He goes the whole way for a touchdown for Notre Dame.
They were actors, but brilliant actors, and who really loved football.
That passion continues to draw fans to the radio every game day. The emotion pouring out is often so rich that the fan has a better seat in his car or favorite chair than in the bleachers of the stadium.
Bob Ufer, the old-time Michigan announcer, his call of Anthony Carter's 45-yard touchdown pass that beat Lee Corso and the Indiana Hoosiers back in 1979, he goes on a monologue that is just he just lost his mind.
Okay. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Carter has it. Carter is there. Look at those Wolverines. 95 Wolverines going in the end zone. Carter got the pass. In the air, it's done. Buford is going out of his mind. You're listening to it. I hope you can hear me because I've never been so happy in all my cotton picking 59 years. I have broadcast 347 ball games. I've never had one like this. Remember I told you 40 years ago.
When I was probably in the 3rd or 4th grade, I was watching the OSU Michigan game on TV with my dad. And at that time, I hadn't played an instrument. And I watched the Script Ohio on TV and watched the I dot the I. And I said to my dad, I want to do that someday. And he kind of looked at me strangely.
The marching band is a game day spectacle. Bridging the two halves of action on the gridiron, the band provides an opportunity not only for innovative entertainment, but also keeps up the spirit of the faithful. They first appeared in the Midwest and were militaristic. The concept spread and was redefined. Nowhere did it elevate to preeminence as in the pulsating gridirons of traditional black college football.
Black college football really is it's a social event. It's a community event, and there are many people who go to black college football games just to see halftime.
You can sort of feel it as you get close to halftime, the concession stands start to thin out, because even though the game may not be as exciting that day, people are making their way back to their seat or some vantage point where they can watch the band, and you can sort of feel the buzz.
And the bands march out, and it's a show. You know, you go to a black college football game, and a concert breaks out.
They just high energy, high stepping. I think maybe Coach Rob said it one time. There's a lot of guys that can't make the band, but can make the football team.
The competition to be in a black college band, the competition between black college bands is just as fierce as the competition between the football programs and the players. I mean, there are band directors who've had their bands working out with car headlights shining on them late at night because they want to get these things right.
The band director who introduced halftime flair in the South was Grambling's Conrad Hutchinson. He was from a Tuskegee family of musicians, and in the service he had found himself performing with military bands. But when Conrad arrived at Grambling in 1952, he was ready to shatter the way most fans watched halftime.
He introduced dance steps to go with the music, and they played the popular tunes, so they appealed to the public.
Our band is playing and moving and dancing all at the same time. The only problem we have with the band is making certain that they don't go over the halftime allotment so that we don't get penalized.
This band has often been imitated, but never adequately duplicated. The famous, nationally renowned Grambling State University Tiger Marching Band.
In a 1936 game against Indiana, the 120-piece Ohio State band fanned out across the belly of the gridiron, scripting Ohio in a manner that was reminiscent of smoke riding common to the state fair. The awe-inspiring feat left a lasting impression because of the solitary band member who completed the formation. To this day, one senior is chosen for each home game to stand alone in Columbus Stadium and dot the I.
The person who dots the I has nothing to look forward to except being a parent and a grandparent. Outside of that, he has nothing to look forward to. He dotted the I. What else is there? The lottery, forget the lottery. Forget being president. He dotted the I.
To go out there and have basically 90 to 100,000 people on their feet cheering, the roar of the crowd, they are exhilarated beyond belief. You can look into their eyes and know that this is a very special moment in their life and will be forever. The Friday rehearsal before the Saturday was really when it all just hit. The news cameras are there, newspapers, reporters, my parents and family were in town, and that night I put the last coat of shine on my horn and kind of said a little prayer and went to bed and woke up bright and early, and it was time to go to work then. The crowd got louder and louder, and the O, the H, the I. And finally, I was standing at the top of the small O, and I gave the drum major 5. All I can remember is this intense roar. My last thought was, don't fall. And I can remember the moment to this date, and I remember the tears streaming from my eyes when the band played our alma mater, Kerman, Ohio. And it's a moment I'll never forget.
In 1922, Texas A&M took on a mighty Center College in what was then called the Dixie Classic. The game was so brutal that by the end of the first half, A&M was in danger of not being able to finish the game because so many of their players had been injured. Out of a moment of need and desperation, Aggie coach D.X. Bible gave rise to one of the most symbolic traditions in college football.
He had a player on the team named King Gill that had been on the team, and he had released him so he could start practicing with the basketball team. So he sent word up to King Gill.
King, we're about to run out of players. Is there any way you could suit up and be available in the second half if we need you? And he said, sure, Coach, I'll do it.
Years later, E. King Gill would recall, There were no dressing rooms in the stadiums in those days. Anyway, I put on the uniform of one of the injured players. We got under the stands, and he put on my clothes, and I put on his uniform. I was ready to play, but was never sent into the game.
He really wasn't needed, but since that time, our entire student body stands throughout the game, being ready. If we're called upon, we're ready to help. That's what the 12th man's all about.
It would be 61 years after Gill stood poised on the sidelines as the original 12th man before the Aggie student body was finally called onto the field. In 1983, under Coach Jackie Sherrill, Texas A&M's kickoff team was comprised completely of walk-on, non-scholarship athletes. The tradition has since been modified. Each week, one walk-on is chosen to wear number 12 and charge downfield in the kickoffs.
The 12th man is a living thing. It's not just a thing that they put a statue out there and said, hey, this would be a great idea. No, the 12th man lives, and it always will.
The spirit of the 12th man resides in the soul of fans at all universities and is perhaps best expressed in a blood-pumping ritual passed down through the years, the singing of the school's fight song.
And whole stadiums up. And it's not that you're just clapping. Most of the time they're clapping in time to the music. And it starts at a young age. If you go to football games, there are 4- and 5-year-olds there. They know the fight song, and so they grow up with it.
Cheer, cheer for old Notre Dame.
Fight the team across the field, show them Ohio's here. Da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da.
Hail to the victors, valiant hail to the conquering heroes, hail, hail to Michigan, the champions of the West.
The Victors. This is actually my favorite as a pure song, okay? It pounds. It's invigorating, it's stunning, it's proud.
My friends counted Rocky Top 39 times in the Tennessee game in the first half. 39 times the band played Rocky Top. You think their fans weren't fired up?
And that guy would come out in a white horse and start prancing around. I got more fired up than they did. I just loved it. I loved that song, and it got me going.
These songs are so meaningful to you, even if they're not great, but if they're great songs like these, they live on forever.
It still sticks to me today, and every time I hear that Notre Dame fight song, I get goosebumps. While all your sons are marching onward to victory.
No one can predict what turns the pitched battle on a muddy field may take, or the joy and anguish that will follow. But the traditions that surround the game remain the same. It is that continuity that bonds. And at moments when the outcome of the game seems more important than anything else, it is tradition that gives perspective.
First day, you get your head shaved and get an orientation by the superintendent, and at the end you say, beat Army. So right away you know that this is a big deal.
It means so much to them. It really does. They're not going anywhere except on active duty when it's over. They're playing because they love it. They love to win. They want to win.
There is a fierce rivalry, but yet there is a comradeship at the end of the game.
I don't think you'll ever see a football game where both teams line up after the game
shake each other's hand, go to each other's side, and stand as the other sings their alma mater.
You see tears on both sides because the seniors realize this is an ending for them. Whether they've won or lost the game, football's over.
I cry at the end of every one of those games because knowing that these seniors have put it all on the line to win that football game and moving on to defend our country.
These guys could be fighting together someday on the same team in a much larger sense than a football sense.
And you look and you're in the stands and you say, I'd rather be here than anywhere else in the world to see this. To me, it's the greatest tradition in college football.
The fifth quarter at Wisconsin is an opportunity for college football fans to celebrate themselves. With the players tucked away in the locker room, all the pageantry and pomp surrounding the game culminate when Badger students, boosters, and faculty stream from the stands for an impromptu party with a school band.
The first time I saw the fifth quarter, I was halfway out of the door, and students yelled at me to stay, that I was missing the best part of Wisconsin football. I didn't know what they were talking about, but the students actually came and got me and turned me around and walked me back into the students section to sit with them as the fifth quarter began. And then I saw what they saw.
Everybody doesn't win all their games all the time, and so people like to leave the stadium feeling good about their university and feeling good about their team and feeling good about their band.
I learned how to do the chicken dance. If you wanted to be part of Wisconsin and you wanted to be part of the fifth quarter, you had to learn how to dance like a chicken. Deep down inside of you, it bonds you to the university, to the state, to the wider community who never went to the University of Wisconsin, but want to be part of the spirit.
While the fifth quarter offers college football fans a celebration in its purest form, a tradition in tiny Williamstown, Massachusetts does the same for its players. In the reverse course of the Tiger Walk, the Williams football team leaves the field and walks through town after their final home game of the season.
The walk is where you leave behind the intensity of the competition and start to enjoy yourself with your teammates.
For some, this is the last time they will experience the feeling of a college football game firsthand. And so they hold on to the moment, hoping that by gathering in Rogers St. Pierre's barbershop, the day will never end.
That's right, man.
A number of years ago, I guess they started, and somebody dropped in there and they started smoking stogies, I guess, and embellishing stories and giving creative haircuts to one another or something. And I've been there 28 years. I've never set foot in the place or even near the place. It's kind of like, I guess, I don't want to know.
It's just a wonderful chance to prolong the day. You have a great sense of history when you're in there. Great sense of celebration and fun. It's a wonderful ending.